We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Seth Wilson, partner of Morris Wilson. Seth, what is Morris Wilson? What are you guys doing?
We're a law firm in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. We specialize in medical malpractice, product liability, and other complex types of personal injury cases.
How large or how small is the firm?
We're 5 attorneys, and then we have support staff as well.
And where are you from originally?
I grew up in a little town called Selinsgrove in central Pennsylvania.
And how many brothers and sisters?
So I have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger than me. And then I consider myself to have an older brother. We had an exchange student when I was 14, and he's really become part of our family.
What's his name, and what do you mean he's become part of your family?
So his name is Andreas. He's from Germany, and he came and lived with us for a year when I was 14. And I was the best man in his wedding. He was the best man at my wedding. I've spent quite a bit of time in Germany as well, including interning with a family friend of his family who was an attorney. So we've had a really interesting sort of connection between ourselves in central Pennsylvania and this faraway place in Germany.
And you guys are like brothers.
We are.
Uh-huh. And did you guys compete with each other when you were kids?
Quite a bit, and I think that was one of the reasons my parents wanted us to have an exchange student as well. Certainly broaden our horizons. My sister and my horizons a little bit living in central Pennsylvania, where we're a little more secluded from big cities and culture, but also somebody to sort of match my energy and competitiveness when it came to sports, which I was really into, certainly as a kid, and that only increased when Andreas was there visiting us.
Mm-hmm.
Seth, can you tell us a little bit about who your mentor was when you were growing up?
Sure. Well, I guess certainly my father was a mentor for me. He owned a small business, an orthodontic practice. He still has that practice today in central Pennsylvania.
Did you ever get involved in that business?
I sure did. When I was probably about 12, my sister and I would start to go into the office and help. We'd do filing of models. We would, meet patients and bring them back into the back and put the bibs on them when they sat down in the chair, and helped create the models as well. So it was really fascinating. I really enjoyed working with my dad and seeing what he did every day.
And what did you learn from that experience?
Well, certainly running a business, whether it's a law practice or an orthodontic practice or whatever it may be, a lot of those same skills really translate. So it's treating the patients or the clients the right way. It's making sure that each person who comes into a practice feels like they're the most important patient, because in my practice they are. My clients are extremely important to me and my partners, and so nurturing those clients, nurturing them when they're in our hands, sort of like my dad did as well when he was treating patients.
And who is somebody that you looked up to outside of your immediate family?
So interestingly, my partner, Bob Morris, was a family friend as well. And he's somebody who I really looked up to from a young age. And I would really pick his brain about his cases. I just found it fascinating when he would talk to me about the cases that he was taking on. And so I learned a lot about that when I was in my early teens. And I really admired what he was doing.
And you work with him now? You said he's your partner?
I do. I work with him now. He's one of my partners, and he's been a mentor to me my entire career. And interestingly, we brought in another one of my childhood friends who I grew up with, Josh Knapp, as one of our partners as well. He and I grew up together. We played on sports teams together. He's one of our partners too. So at our law firm, there is really at the top of our firm this really incredible level of trust that allows us to have a true team approach when we are handling cases for our clients.
And in the green room, you mentioned you have 2 daughters that help you out occasionally with what you're doing at work. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I do. So I have Julia and Ellie are 8 and 10, and every single time that I presented an opening statement in court over the past 5 or 6 years, I presented my opening statement to them. And the reason I do that is because I handle very complex cases, medical malpractice cases and product liability cases where the subject matter can be very difficult. But my job for my clients is to really distill that down into something that's simple so that the jury looks at it and can understand sort of the equities in the case, why the position that I'm arguing for is right and correct. And so if I'm able to do that for my children and they understand the complex medicine or the product at issue, then I feel like I'm doing a good job. And many times I've done an opening statement for them and they've been critical of it, and it's time to go back to the drawing board and make sure that it works for the jury.
And what have you learned from your daughters that's helped you at work?
Well, certainly I think it's teaching them the value of hard work, and also that the notion of fairness and equity that I remember having as a kid, they've kind of hearkened me back to that at times. You can get lost, I think, as you get out into the business world, you're focusing on running a business. They bring it back to really this simple idea of who's right and who's wrong. Kids, I think, are amazing where they have that real sense of right and wrong and fairness, and, presenting that to my kids and allowing them to give me some insight as to how that fairness should play out in the courtroom is something I've really found valuable.
And Seth, what about your mom? Can you tell us a little bit about her, what she was like growing up?
So my mom was just a wonderful person. She was a musician. She was a preschool teacher, and in our family, she was really the engine of our family. She strove to make sure that my sister and I were well-rounded. That was always something that she was in our ear about. Very persistent about us taking part in activities, and she tried to make sure that it wasn't just sports that I was involved in, but that I was doing piano, that I was taking part, in sort of rigorous academic activities as well when I was a kid. And that's played forward, to now. As a personal injury attorney, when I handle different types of cases, you have to learn a very complex issue in medicine or, about a product. And so being well-rounded, sort of understanding how different professions work, how, different areas outside of the law function is really an important process for an attorney to understand so that, again, you can simplify the case and, distill that down for a jury.
So 8 to 14, you mentioned that you were energetic and curious. What kind of sports were you playing?
Sure. So I was soccer, basketball, tennis, skiing. I would say those are probably the 4 ones that I did predominantly.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what was your favorite sport?
I would say at that age it was soccer. I played soccer probably starting around 8 or 9 year-round.
What was your role on the team?
I was a midfielder.
What was the role of the midfielder? What was the personality trait there?
So the midfielder, I would consider as someone who's well-rounded. So you're playing offense, you're playing defense, you're right in the thick of everything, but you're really, you have to be a team player when you're playing midfield. You need to come up with the offense, but you also need to fall back with the defense.
What's that have to do with your role in this with this law firm called Morris Wilson?
So when we try our cases, it's extremely important to be offensive. We are litigating a case and we're telling a jury this is what we want the jury to do, and here's why. But you also have to put just as much attention into playing defense as well and making sure that you know what the weaknesses are and that you are covering those weaknesses to make sure that the jury is focusing on the right things.
Mm-hmm. So before you do an opening statement, you run it by your kids. And what do you think that's done to your kids, the fact that Dad's been practicing in front of them?
Well, I would hope it's done a couple of things. One, making them feel comfortable speaking. And, I've asked them to do that occasionally sometimes as well, where they get a chance to, how would you say this? I think public speaking is a really important, thing for a child to learn. Mm-hmm. And I think also telling them that you can find a job and a profession where you get to do something for someone else. Because, when I'm up talking and giving an opening statement, I'm very, very passionate about it because it's someone else's life is at stake. Someone may have lost their life, and I'm up there asking a jury to make sure that, a surviving child isn't left with nothing as they move forward in a life without a parent. Mm-hmm. So letting them understand that you can have a job where you can truly make a difference in people's lives.
So what have your daughters taught you that you now use in the law practice?
Sure. I think what they have taught me is I think persistence for sure. My kids are very, very persistent in when they want something, and making sure that I follow through with that type of persistence when I am litigating a case.
You mentioned that when you were 13, you worked on a horse farm. What was that all about?
So my sister was interested in riding horses. I was not. And so she got to ride the horses, and I took a job at the farm. And basically, I painted fences all summer, white fences. It was very boring. But it was also, sort of interesting work for me, too. I got to, at the end of the summer, sort of look at acres and acres of fence that I had painted. And, it taught me really the true value of hard work, being out in the hot sun and doing a job that you may not like all that much. Mm-hmm. But I still had a real sense of accomplishment when I finished it.
Mm-hmm. You more like your mom or dad?
I would say probably more like my mom. My mom is was very outgoing and friendly, and very interested in others, and that's something that I feel like I have as well, and I've been able to use that in my law practice as well.
The website address of Morris Wilson.
It's www.morriswilson.com.
Let me have that one more time.
Sure, it's morriswilson.com.
We've been speaking with Seth Wilson, partner of Morris Wilson here on Executive Leaders Radio. And Shannon, could you give us a rundown on who else we've had the opportunity of speaking with, please?
Sure, Herb. We had a great show today. We had Michael Vanderveen, founder of Vanderveen O'Neill, Hartshorn and Levin, Edith Pierce, founder of the Pierce Law Firm, Rosemary Pinto, partner of Feldman and Pinto, and just now Seth Wilson, partner of Morris Wilson.
I'd like to thank my co-host, Shannon Lane, for giving me a hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. Shannon, what's the website address for this firm, Newmark Knight Frank?
ngkf.com.
ngkf.com. Thank you for Shannon. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.